Good afternoon, welcome to Rundlii Gaming. So we're going to be doing a video on the kind of like a dogfight sort of game. This is the game of X-Wing. Your different ships on each side, and they're trying to defeat each other. Now there are missions and such, but for the most part, the majority of the game are going to be dogfight style battles where what you're trying to do is outmaneuver your opponent and defeat them in combat. And pretty much what this video is going to do is kind of go over the way to actually play the game of X-Wing itself, and to kind of explain how it's actually played as you play through it. What we're going to be showing you here is roughly what you're going to start out with a base set game. You're going to have your measurement tool. You can pre-measure in this game before you actually shoot stuff. Some games allow it, some games do not. This game does allow you to actually do a pre-measure before you actually do something. That's what this tool is here. And we'll explain it more once we go to the attack phase and we start dealing with that. These are going to be your movements. If you do a 1 forward, 2 forward, 3 forward, 4 forward, 5 forward, these are your hard turns. If you do a hard 90-degree turn, it'll be the 1, 2, 3 up here. And these are going to be the soft ones, which are like a 45-degree turn. Then you also have the flip, which we'll go over as well, but that's basically just using a straight one and then you turn it on the other side when you get over there. Some other things that will come with too are these little number markers here. This is if you're using a lot of the same ships. So let's say if you're running a lot of these Academy pilots here, because you can have multiple ships as long as they are not named. For example, I could not put 2 Luke Skywalkers into the same game. I would have to use Luke Skywalker and another person. However, you can have as many Academy pilots as you want because it is not a named character. Which usually you can find that by, if you look on the card itself, there will be like a small like little bullet thing or a like little asterisk almost next to the name itself. For example, Backstabber here, though I believe this actually comes out of the expansion for the TIE Fighter itself. The TIE Fighter is named Backstabber, and Backstabber is a named character, so you cannot have more than one Backstabber. But you can have one Backstabber and then a bunch of Academy pilots, or just all Academy pilots. You cannot have 2 of those, you cannot have 2 of the Lukes. But basically, as long as it's not a named character, you can have multiple of it. And as I said, it's always annotated on the card itself by like a little notation on the... And so pretty much, you're going to have a couple different things that you're looking at on your thing here. Now, this is mostly is to kind of tell you who is actually piloting this particular ship. Because, for example, if you see the 2 TIE Fighters here, they're actually going to have different things on the bottom here, and it can kind of tell you which pilot is which, so that way you don't get them confused when they're actually on the battlefield shooting at each other. But it'll also give you some other important information, which, as I said, is going to be the same as the actual stat card here. We're going to actually use one for an actual type. We'll actually use one for the X-Wing. Now this is actually the cardboard piece for Wedge Antilles, which I probably butchered that. In this case it has 3 attack, 2 agility, because the red is going to be the attack, so that would be how many red dice you would roll whenever you were to shoot at someone. The green is how many agility you have, basically your chance to dodge. You would roll those whenever you're defending. The yellow is the hull. That is how much damage you can take before it's blown up. And then there are shield. Shield will always be busted before your hull does. The X-Wing on this side here has 2 of those. Generally speaking, now this is not always going to be the case, but generally speaking, the stats are going to be all the same regardless of which pilot you have in it. The only difference is with the pilots, they have special abilities. For example, we're going to use Backstabber here. Backstabber, when attacking from outside the defender's firing arc, roll 1 additional attack dice. And we're going to kind of explain that more, but a lot of times what you're doing is you're buying abilities. If you go with a named pilot, the reason to do so is more so the ability. As you can see, with the Academy pilot, he has 2 attack, 3 defense, 3 agility, and 3 hull. Same thing with Backstabber. He has 2 attack, 3 agility, 3 hull. Neither of them have shields either. But again, the reason why you might take Backstabber is he gets you an additional dice if you're attacking outside the arc. So you have to do a little bit more moving around and trying to get behind them and kind of moving around for positioning. Then, and so that kind of explains the 4 stats on the bottom, and then it'll give you like the name above that. The big orange number here is the pilot number. Now how it works is that the low pilots always fly first, but they shoot last. And the reason for this particular rule is, let's say your Backstabber here was fighting in the Academy pilot. Let's say there are different teams. The Academy pilot has a few maneuver options he can do as his action. So he might try to move out of the way of Backstabber from getting in that firing arc if he knew where he was going, but since the Academy pilot flies first, then the Academy pilot's going to move. He might decide to maneuver a little bit depending on what he feels Backstabber might do, but he's not entirely sure. So pretty much that's the reason for it. Is a lot of times, mostly for the Empire, it's more beneficial to be able to maneuver around a little bit, knowing where all your enemies currently are. And then, so that's pretty much what the thing is. And also too, with a high pilot skill, if you shoot someone with a low pilot skill and it blows them up, they are dead before it actually reaches their turn, so they do not fire back. So sometimes that's also a really big benefit. Because let's say if you were fighting, because these are actually very low point games. We're looking at about 30 to 33 points here per side. And generally you're going to play with about 100 points. Normally on the Rebels you're looking at between 2 and 5 ships. Competitively you're looking at probably 4. 2 to 4. With the Empire, a lot of times they'll run a lot of TIE fighters, sometimes they'll run other variations, but you can see up to 7, 8 ships with the TIE fighters, because a lot of times the way they play is they're much more dispensable. They blow up really easily. As I mentioned earlier, they only have 3 hull, they have 2 attack. The difference is that you're firing with lots of these guys. Right now you have 2 of these ships compared to 1, so effectively they're both firing 1 time as long as they're within the firing arc. And also this has to destroy both of those before this one's blown up. So you're kind of playing with a more dispensable army with TIE fighters. Now to kind of go over the turn order itself, well, we also have a few more things, but we're going to explain a lot of the actions and firing arc and stuff like that as we played through a few rounds here. But that's also what the little thing here is. It's to kind of demonstrate where the firing arc is, where you're able to shoot at. Now there are some ships that do kind of mess with that a little bit, like the Millennium Falcon has a 360 range, can shoot anywhere around him, whereas the Slave One can shoot on the front or the back. So there's a gun on the back as well. Additionally, you'll be getting these dials. You'll have to put these together when you get them, but fairly simple. You just snap them on. They're actually pretty neat. Now what's going to happen is at the beginning of the round, each of these people are going to take 1 dial for every ship that they currently possess. So this one has the 1 X-Wing, this one has the 2 TIE Fighters. And they're going to do their moves, and then we're going to put them face down. X-Wing will do the same thing. And we're just going to kind of cut to the chase on this one here and kind of move them kind of quickly. But how it's going to be played is that the first round is going to look at the pilot skills. So everybody has their dial down. So at this point the 1 pilot's going to go first because he has a pilot skill of 1. Backstabber has a pilot skill of 6. Luke Skywalker has a pilot skill of 8. So it will start out with the Academy pilot. So we're going to go with this one. he's going to go 5 forward. And you're going to see on this little, on these plastic ship markers here, there's little grooves in the front of it. And what those are for is so that you can put the maneuver thing right inside there, so you can actually put it within the grooves, and then it goes front to back. So you put it into the front grooves, and then you put it into the back grooves. So at this point, the Academy pilot can do a couple different actions here, and we're going to kind of go over those a little more in depth now. Now with the TIE fighter, this may be different from what the X-Wing does. So you're going to see a couple different skills, but with them, the first thing they can do is focus. What focus does, let's say I'm going to do a practice roll with both of these. Actually, let's just modify a few things here. Now you could use the focus. Let's say if you did have a focus on it, you'll have these little token things here that you'll actually put on the ship when you decide to do a focus. So let's say this guy during his action, because first you do your move, then right after you do your move, then you have to figure out what action you want to do. So for his action, let's say he were to focus, and then if he was in range of the X-Wing when they do the attack later, and he were to have rolled 2 of these, the focus will switch all eyes into regular hits. Or, let's say in the case of defense, you can also turn all eyes into evades. So pretty much what it does is it changes all of the eyes over to either hit or dodge, depending on if you're defending or if you're attacking. So this has a little bit of versatility on it. So if you do focus, you can either, so let's say if you're going against Luke Skywalker is going to shoot at you first. So let's say on this particular scenario, he were to have attacked with his 3 dice. He's going to get 2 hits. Well, this would probably not help him at all. So, alright, so let's pretend it was something more like this. Because the TIE fighter actually has 3 agility, and then the X-Wing here is 3 attack. So he would have 2 attack, so he would do 2 damage. And then the TIE fighter has 1 evade. However, he also has 1 of the eyes. Now he can spend this to then evade, if he can turn that into an evade if he wants. This will save him from taking damage, if he chose to do that. Or he could leave it on, and he could take his 1 point of damage. Now why this might matter is because when it comes back to the Academy pilot's turn, he's going to then be able to attack back. So the Academy pilot only gets 2 dice, however. In this particular scenario though, the focus would not really do much good. Now if he were to have rolled an eye and a hit, then he could spend it and then get another hit. So it's kind of risky to hold on to it. He could have avoided that damage to begin with, because at the same time the X-Wing here is going to also roll his defense. If he had a focus, he could turn both of those into evades. If he didn't, then he's taking 2 damage, which is going to be painful because you only have 5 hit points total, 2 shield, 3 hull for this. Now there is one other side to this red dice, which is, it kind of looks like the hit but has a little hole in the center, and this is what they call a critical hit. And what this actually is that you will take your hit deck here. And this actually is how you track damage that has been done to your ships. So let's say alright, so we're going to take 1 hit, 1 crit. Normally, actually we're going to evade it like this. Let's say this were the attack. So there were 2 hits and a crit, and then the defender had 1 evade. The evade will always evade the regular hits first, and then once you evade all the regular hits, then you can evade crits. So in this particular scenario, This will get rid of this. Ooh. So these two go away. So then it goes down to 1 hit, 1 crit. So let's say we'll just pretend that Luke Skywalker took this. Actually, we'll put on the TIE Fighter here. Now, first you take the hit first. So the hit will be just a face down card. The crit will be a face up card. Now what the crit says is immediately receive 1 stress token, then flip this card face down. So, let's see, and the stress tokens are the little red triangle tokens here. And then you would put that on them. Now what stress does is that on your dial there are going to be 3 different types of movement. There are going to be white movements, so like the 3 hard left, hard right, those are white maneuvers, whereas like a 3 forward is a green maneuver. Green maneuvers remove stress. A white maneuver doesn't add stress, but it doesn't remove stress either, whereas your red maneuver will actually add stress. However, if you currently have stress on your ship, you cannot do another red maneuver. So that's kind of the downside to it as well. Also, if you have stress on you, you cannot take actions. So like the focus, you will not be able to do a focus until you get rid of that stress token. So that was an explanation of like focus, even though we kind of dipped into a few different things in that. The next one is an evade. So we've kind of demonstrated a little bit as far as what an attack is. Now what the evade token is you can just take an evade, and we're going to kind of do another mock attack here. So crit crit. So this is a pretty good one. So now remember, as I said, this is 2 crits. So if I were to have taken any hits here, I'm going to take 2 critical damage. The crits would be 2 face-up cards. However, I rolled 1 evade and then 2 eyes. However, I have not put a focus on this, so those 2 eyes don't actually help me. So I will be able to evade 1, but I can also spend this token to count as another evade. Now when I spend this, it will be no longer there. So why that matters is that, let's say if you were to have been attacked by 2 or 3 ships, which is more often the case if you're playing a lot of different ships on each side, because let's say if there's 4 ships on this side, 6 or 7 on this side, many of them may fire at the same thing to kill it as quickly as possible. So that evade token will evade the other one. And that would be a good defensive measure if you know for sure you're going to be fired at a bunch, is perhaps take that evade, and that might save you like a critical damage or a regular damage, potentially. The last thing on the card itself is something that a lot of the Empire stuff does. Now the Rebels also have a maneuver that kind of helps you play with that as well, which is called a barrel roll. The barrel roll is you put it a 1 forward, and you put it either on the front left or front right, and then you put it to the back side of the other. So in this particular case, you are kind of just flipping to the side, and this is where this is going to be much more beneficial for the Empire, because if they know where each of the people are moving to, then they can kind of position themselves a little bit better if they have the pilot skills to know where they're going. So let's say if, for example, this side had a really low pilot, he moves here, then I know that maybe I want to maneuver a certain way with maybe a barrel roll, or there are boost actions too, though the TIE fighters don't have them, and it kind of lets you do like a small turn, and it kind of can position you really well to actually attack them but not actually be attacked. As an example of this, let's say that the X-Wing here was actually a low pilot. So let's say this guy flew first. Let's say you were something like this, and you were to have barrel rolled out. Now your firing arc will still touch the back end of this ship here. So you're still able to shoot at him, but he's not able to shoot at you because his firing arc's out this way. So that's where, like, positioning is going to make a huge deal in a lot of these situations, because positioning is going to get you to where you can actually fire at stuff, and so that's why sometimes high pilots are really useful for that. Now, the backstabber, we're going to go ahead and do his maneuver as well, which we actually did a 5-4 on him earlier. Now, why I wanted to demonstrate this as well is that in this particular case, you cannot go front to back. In this case, it ends here, so therefore we're able to run into him. So you're going to move it along the maneuver as far as possible until it runs into the ship. They are not considered to be necessarily front or back. They're kind of overlapping, but you touch them base to base. If they were enemy ships, they cannot fire at each other, though there is an exception. There is a pilot that allows you to still fire at them, but you cannot fire at a pilot that you're currently touching due to the movement like that. So let's say if the X-Wing were to have run into one of these ships, they're considered overlapping, cannot fire at each other. In this case, it doesn't matter because they're the same side. Then lastly is the X-Wing. He's going to go forward. Oh wait, the backstabber gets his action, because remember, he barrel rolled to move out of the way. And we're going to give backstabber a focus. And the X-Wing's going to do a 4-forward. Now at this point, you're actually going to measure out the distance between the closest ships just to see who can fire at each other. And this is where this is going to come into play. You can only fire within 3 range of your target. So in this case, it's a little ways out, not by a lot though. So pretty much, this turn they're not going to be able to do anything to each other, which is fine. Like, he could pre-measure before he decided to take his action, because maybe he wanted to, focus or whatever he wanted to do. Like with the X-Wing, he only gets 2 actions. He does get focus, so we've already went over focus, which is the eye. Switches all the eyes over to either hits or misses, hits or evades. Or he gets this thing called target lock. Now the target lock has to be something within 3 range. Normally I just put the blue one on the one that's doing the target lock. Normally you'd grab the ones that have the same letter on it. I have so many of these target locks, I don't usually sort through them to get specific lettering. But generally, if you're playing with a bunch of stuff, target locking stuff, you're going to want to get the ones with the same letter on it. Because in the center there, like this has a B on it, it has an A on the back, this has a D and a P, so like you can use those for locking multiple things across the battlefield. But normally, as long as you're within 3 range, you can do a target lock on someone. What target lock is only for the attack. So it's not something you can do on defense. When you were to do your roll, you will be able to re-roll any number of dice on your attack. So you would remove your target lock, and then you can re-roll these 2. In this case, it really didn't help me any. I get 1 attack, and then nothing. And then they would, of course, roll their defense. Their 1 evade would block that. So in this particular scenario, like with that target lock, it wouldn't have helped much. But you can actually find a pretty useful bit of information on Board Game Geek, where I'm also posting this video at as well. On Board Game Geek, they actually have a numbers page that actually breaks down the percentages where focus might be more beneficial than target locks, and kind of the numbers of different things for that. So if you're a numbers person and you just enjoy watching, looking over different things to be more competitive, that might be an interesting little picture that you can actually look at on there. And it kind of gives you a really good breakdown as far as the different numbers within the game, your chance of rolling this, your chance of rolling that. And, things like that. So it's actually really useful for that. So at this point, no attacks actually happened because, as I said, they weren't within the range 3, but I figured I would kind of demonstrate it a little bit to kind of give you an idea as far as what an attack is. And we're going to do a couple bad maneuvers here. So this guy's going to go there. This guy will go there. Because what I'm going to show you now is we have little asteroids here. And to kind of give you an idea of what those do. So we're going to kind of explain that. So again, the turn order goes with low pilots first, so they're going to fly first. The academy pilot's going to go soft to left. So put it in the front here. And the thing is, he just landed on the asteroid. Now there are going to be two different scenarios. Either, well, of course 3 if you don't mess on asteroid at all, but either you pass through an asteroid. If you pass through an asteroid, you're going to roll 1 red dice. And you're going to take whatever it shows on it. And then you also lose your action. Basically, you're spending most of your time trying to evade this particular rock and not get hurt. So let's say if I were to do like a 4 forward and it ran straight over this asteroid here, then this particular person is going to take a red dice. They will take a hit on this one. Again, you just take a roll with the red dice, you're going to take that particular type of damage. If it's a crit, you take a crit. If it's a regular hit, you take the regular hit. And then you lose your action, so you don't get an action. You still get to shoot if you move over it. However, if you land on top of it, basically you're still maneuvering, so you're not able to actually fire either. So the first thing is, you roll a red dice, you take the damage, you lose your action, and then you lose your shot if you land on it. If you pass through it, you can still fire, but you lose your action, still take a red dice of damage. So, in some cases you won't take any damage, in some cases you will. It's kind of a risk equals reward thing, because let's say you were really trying to get to some guy on the side that maybe was turning and you want to get behind him, you might run the risk of just flying through it and then shooting him, if need be. I mean, there's different scenarios where sometimes you just have to suck it up and go for it. So in this case, he does not get an action, so he will not be able to choose an action for this round. 2 forward for this guy. So backstabber, 2 forward. He will then get to pick his action. He's going to do an evade. And actually, I did roll a damage for this guy, so we're going to put down a damage card on the Academy Pilot. So right now, he's at 1 damage. He only gets 3 total, so therefore he may get blown up pretty soon if he does take any considerable damage. And then the X-Wing himself is going to take a 2 forward. Now, he kind of knows where everybody is at this point. So he could either target lock, so let's say if he wanted to target lock something, he could do that. Or if he just wants to do a focus to kind of defend or attack. But let's say he's going to go all out. His goal is to kill this Academy Pilot here. The Academy Pilot kind of put himself in a predicament. He could go ahead and try to kill him, because he's not going to one-shot him for sure. So perhaps it might be a good idea to do that. So in this particular case, alright, so we're going to go to the attack now. With the Luke Skywalker, he'll fire first because he has a higher attack skill here. Oh, sorry, pilot skill. First you're going to measure out. You are within range 1, because we're going to discuss ranges here a little bit. If you're within range 1, you get 1 extra attack dice. If you're within range 2, you're neutral, so no extra attack, no extra defense. If you're within range 3, it's one additional agility to the defender. So it kind of weighs it out a little bit. If you're doing like a long shot out somewhere to someone, then you're not going to they're able to dodge your shot a little bit better because it's such a far distance that they're shooting at you. So in this case, we're going to fire at the TIE Fighter here. And they actually do get 1 additional attack dice, so they'll be at 4 instead of 3. Normally they're at 3, but he's going to spend his focus, and that'll turn this one eye here into a hit. So he's at 3 hits now. This TIE Fighter, he doesn't have any actions put on him. He has 3 agility, so he's going to go ahead and roll his agility. Oop. He does have 1 evade. He also has an eye, but since he could not focus, he is not going to help him. So in this case, it'll get rid of 1 of these hits. 2 more hits will go through. He's at 3 damage. That'll kill this TIE Fighter. Now at this point, so this ship was removed. So if he did have a target to fire at, though it wouldn't have mattered since he landed over the asteroid, he wouldn't have been able to fire anyway. He would not have gotten a shot anyway, regardless of where he was, because he was killed before his attack actually occurred. Now Backstabber, on the other hand, will get to fire back. Now the difference is they're actually at range 2 of each other. So he's going to get his regular amount of attack, which is 2. Now Backstabber has the additional ability that as long as he's outside of this person's firing arc, he gets an extra attack. However, he is not. So as you can see, he could actually shoot at him, but he chose to shoot at someone else. And so that's kind of the pro and con of that. But he's going to go ahead and do his attack back. So a hit and a crit. The X-Wing gets 2 agility back. So he will get 1 dodge. Now the dodge will take off the regular hit first. So these two get rid of each other. There's a crit left. Now with the X-Wing, he does have shields. So the shield will actually be removed instead of taking the actual crit. Once shields are gone, then that's when you actually start taking cards. And this is going to basically keep proceeding until all ships, until one side is completely eliminated. And as I said, there are different, quite a bit of stuff involved with this. Now, that's the core concept of the game itself as far as how things are played, how things are moved. Then there's going to be a little bit more tactics involved with different things. Because another thing too is maybe choosing different pilots, because a lot of it's also based on points. Normally your typical tournament style setup will be about 100 points. Luke Skywalker here is worth 28 points, whereas Rookie Pilot is worth only 21. So this will give you 7 more points to play around with, but again, he's only a pilot skill 2, he does not have an ability. See, the thing with Luke Skywalker is that when he's defending, he may cause one of his eyes to become an evade. So it gives him a little bit more strength when he is evading stuff, which is really beneficial in most scenarios, because it can really keep Luke Skywalker alive at times. Because let's say if you roll these 2 dice and you were to have gotten 1 eye, you don't have a focus left because you used it on your attack. He can then turn one of those eyes into a focus, or into an evade. And that may prevent him from taking a little bit of damage here and there. Is that worth the extra 7 points though for that ability? It's a very powerful ability. So that's kind of the trade-off you're doing, because it's going to depend heavily on, do I want this one or do I want that one? So yeah, it's little things that you'll have to factor in as you go. And there's a bunch of different pilots. I mean, you can choose from a lot of different abilities. Some of them are going to be more beneficial than others. For the most part, as I said, the stat lines are all going to be the same on most ships. Some of the exceptions being the Millennium Falcon has a ship that is a little bit worse than the others, whereas the other main ships are about the same still, but there's one ship that's kind of gutted out to being almost nothing. But through everything that I own, like these are all pilots. Now I do have quite a few expansions, and you're going to see a couple more videos of different things. This is more just a demonstration of the very baseline version of the game, kind of showing you a demonstration of very basically of how to play. In addition to that, you're also going to get equipment. There is this smaller deck of cards. You get, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 cards with the base expansion. And then these will add additional things to your ship. Like some things that I put down on Backstabber, for example, is this increases his agility value by 1. It's called the stealth device. If you're hit by an attack, you discard this. So for the early part of this game, he's actually sitting on 4 agility, which is really, really good. As soon as he gets hit, though, he loses this. So once he takes a damage, this no longer functions, so that's gone. It is worth 3 points, so sometimes there's a trade-up as far as, is this 3 points worth that extra agility up until I'm hit? Now the thing is, if this guy takes 3 damage, he's destroyed. So sometimes it depends on, you know, how much stuff you want to put on him. And that's the really basics of X-Wing. This is core game mechanics of kind of how to play stuff. We'll pretty much dig into gear and items and stuff like that a little bit more in depth on some of my other videos. I'll probably go over a little bit more as far as the Empire versus the Rebels here. I'll kind of go over a little bit more information on big ships, because big ships do act a little bit differently than your smaller ships. More so, they take a little more practice to play with. Like for example, we have Millennium Falcon here, and they do have a lot bigger of a base, so there's a little bit more to kind of go over with that, which it still effectively plays the same. It just kind of functions a little bit differently as far as how they maneuver within the game itself. So I hope you enjoyed the game of X-Wing. If you've enjoyed this video and you're wanting to learn more about the game itself, there should be some more videos coming out very soon of more stuff related to X-Wing itself. I'm probably going to do about 3 or 4 videos within this series here, just kind of going over maybe some basic strategy, different things you can do with different teams themselves, and then kind of how each of the ships function within it. Most of what we're going to be going over is like Wave 1, Wave 2, and some of the newer waves I haven't really got anything, like the Tanner Div. I don't have the Tanner Div right now, but I will be going over like Millennium Falcon, Slave 1, Lambda Shuttle, like your A-Wing, Y-Wing, TIE Advance, TIE Interceptor. So there's still quite a bit of ships that I'm going to still kind of go over different strategies with and different things you can do with them. Enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching Rundlii Gaming. You have a good day.